To anyone thinking about going vegan, I'll just say that it's going to be the most amazing journey that you ever take.
So, Emily, well, the first question I want to ask you is for the people who haven't already had the privilege of being introduced to you. So, can you please just tell the good people who you are and what it is that you do?
Well, my name's Emily, and I have a YouTube channel called Bite Size Vegan, which also has a website. And what I do there is I try to take kind of more complex topics about veganism and animal rights and simplify it down for people, who either don't have the time to do all of the research themselves, or maybe they're overwhelmed. I think, if you Google the word vegan, a lot of stuff can come up, or even animal rights. And I try to make the videos approachable. The vegan community at times can be a little exclusive in some senses, or there can be that fear that if I'm not vegan yet and I go and try to ask questions, am I going to get punched in the face because I'm still eating meat, And so the
Yeah.
reason I started the channel was to try to create a form of educational activism that would reach non-vegans in a way that was approachable for them. The other thing that I work towards now is also helping give vegans the words that they need to further
Mm.
educate. So that was kind of an unexpected element of it, but
Ah, perfect. I love your videos, Emily. They helped me a lot when I was learning. So,
thank
yeah,
you.
they're a really good resource. Thank
Yeah.
you. Why is it that you think veganism is so important?
I think when we hear the word vegan, a lot of times people think, oh, it's a diet. To me, it's the only logical and compassionate way of living. A lot of people, I don't think anyone in this world ever, well, maybe some people. I think most people in this world don't ever want to be seen as oppressors, or don't ever want to be seen as people who are marginalizing others. We, in general, tend to see discrimination as a bad thing. And yet, even the nicest people, even the most genuine people, the most loving people in this world, a lot of times still continue to be the biggest oppressors. And in that's in exploiting animals, because they are the greatest victims of our world. And they're also the victims that we don't think about, in
Mm.
what we eat and how we dress and the entertainment that we do and the science that we do. We try to, make these new medications and things by using them. They're really these unseen and unheard victims. I
Mm.
mean, even when you think about something as innocent as a child eating chicken nuggets, that seems almost like a wholesome rite of passage for us. And it's really horrific when you really know what's going on behind all of that. And so to me, veganism is kind of shining a light on this incredibly pervasive, like, horror show that's going on behind everything in our lives. You are aware of it when you become vegan and you start to take the blinders off and you get what I think of as like X-ray vision. It really is mind-boggling. I see a piece of cheese and I can tear up, and that sounds crazy to people. But in that, I don't just see a piece of cheese. I see a mother who's lost a child. I see a child who's been put into the veal industry. I see a mother whose body is going to give out on her over 20 years before her natural lifespan, because she's been raped and impregnated so many times, and because she's had so many children stolen from her that she's probably just given up. That's what I see when I see a piece of cheese. So
Yeah.
I've gotten off on a huge tangent, but to me, like,
Great answer.
that's what veganism is about. It's about, like, seeing what's really there and kind of breaking through the fog of what we're, like, indoctrinated to just accept in our lives.
So, why do you think that these good people you mentioned, who are generally really good, loving people, like they can be your best friends, your family, why do you think they haven't gone vegan yet? What's stopping them? Like, why do they think negatively towards veganism, or it's something that they're not compelled to do?
That's kind of like the $1,000,000 question, and I think that's really frustrating for many of us who go vegan and then see our loved ones continue down that path of eating animals. I think there's a number of reasons why people don't make a change. It can be habit or comfort, or this is the way things have always been. I think one of the things that's the strongest things to hold people back, and this isn't the reason that anyone will ever give, if and when you decide to stop eating animal products and to stop exploiting them, you have to basically squarely look yourself in the face and say, I have been exploiting and abusing and paying people to murder innocent beings for me. And that is not an easy thing to confront. It's pretty horrifying. And I have people tell me all the time, like, I wish I'd gone vegan earlier. I'm just so, I feel so guilty for what I did. And I just think it's kind of an admission that not many people want to make, and there's no way to decide to go vegan for ethical reasons and not have to confront that. Of course, if they think about the animals that they're eating, they'll feel bad. And there's that momentary awareness. But if you just kind of stop thinking about it, and you can just go back to oh, it's just ham, or oh, it's just cheese, and kind of make that disconnect again. And because we're raised and socially indoctrinated into this disconnect, even though we're not born with that, and it kind of has to be bred into us, it's done so effectively in our youth that it's very easy to slip right back into, just kind of like an old pair of shoes, you just go right back into it. So
absolutely.
I think honestly that's probably the main reason, even though people will give a million other ones to kind of justify it.
Yeah, it's harder to face it than it is to just dismiss it completely for some trivial reason. Do you think that the world will one day go vegan?
Well, of course, I certainly hope so. As far as when that happens, that's a whole nother question. But I do believe at some point the world will be vegan. I just can't say whether that's going to be a voluntary thing or not, or if it's going to just end up happening by necessity, because there's going to be a tipping point with the environmental destruction aspect of the animal products industry. There's going to be a point where it is no longer sustainable. And so there's going to be a point where we're kind of forced into no longer doing that. And maybe humans might even force it to the point where we're not around for that. So whether it comes by everyone finally having some shift of consciousness and deciding that this is really not something we should be doing, on an ethical standpoint, or whether if our hand is kind of going to be forced just by the unsustainability of this agribusiness that we've created, I think one way or another, eventually it's going to come to that point. I would like to say that it's going to be a shift of consciousness and everyone's going to hold hands and sing. But I don't really know. But one way or another, I do think it would eventually happen.
In what ways would the world improve? What would we see? What changes would be made if at least on a wide scale, people went vegan?
I think everything would improve. I can't think of one thing that would get worse if the world went vegan. I even have a video on my channel that's what if the world went vegan tomorrow, because a lot of people say well, we're going to be overrun by animals, or all this stuff's going to happen, farmers aren't going to have jobs, what are we going to do? One of the analogies that I make in that video and that I stand by is that saying that we have to kill these animals or they're going to overrun the world. That's the same as saying sitting in a room all day and just farting up the room and being well, thank God I'm here to open the window. It's well, it's a human-made problem. We're the one breeding the animals, and so saying that oh, we have to be here to kill. We're not. If the world goes vegan, we're not going to be breeding the animals, so we're not going to have to kill the animals. But as far as what would happen, the environment would finally get to start to heal, and of course another thing is there wouldn't be any hungry people on the planet, really, because we'd have all of this food that we're using to feed 6 billion land animals that we're then slaughtering every year could feed the hungry of the world, so we'd solve world hunger, so hooray for that. But to me, the most important part is that we would no longer be slaughtering 150 billion sentient beings every year. Honestly, I think that there would also be a level of peace brought to the world in general between people. I recently did a video with a quote from Pythagoras he was born in 571 BC. This is not a new concept. Animal rights is not a new concept. And he basically, to paraphrase his really elegant quote, he's basically saying, humans are never going to know peace amongst one another while they're still slaughtering animals. And I really think that's true. Like, how can we find peace in this world when we're constantly slaughtering the most innocent among us? And then we're consuming that daily. We're consuming that terror and that pain and that sadness, and that it's heartbreaking. That's what I think of when I think of a vegan world, is like, mother cows aren't going to have their children ripped from them. Foxes aren't going to be caught in traps and skinned alive so that we can have a fashionable coat. Pigs aren't going to have to be stuck in gestation crates while they're trying to feed their babies. And I mean, that is not going to happen anymore. To me, that's what's important about the world going vegan, is that these animals will have that freedom. They're not going to have to live in that constant terror anymore. And they'll get to finally have the lives that they deserve, like their own lives.
Who inspires you, and what is it about them that inspires you?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of different inspirations in different parts of my life. As far as my vegan activism, my main inspiration going into activism was Gary Yourofsky. I was already vegan when I heard his speech, but I didn't know how to voice my beliefs. Ever since I was a kid, and I've shared this in some of my videos. When, other kids were going door to door selling Girl Scout cookies, I was going door to door trying to educate about the plight of the mountain gorillas. Like, I mean, I was that kid, and I felt, I would sit in my bed, like, when I was, like, 5 or so, and I would just cry myself to sleep every night because I'd just be feeling the enormity of suffering of the animals in the world, and, like, feel like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I make a difference, Like, nobody takes me seriously because I'm, like, this little kid, and I'm really short, and I was even shorter, so... everyone's just like, oh, isn't she cute? But so, like, my whole life, I just felt like I want to make a difference. I want to be able to speak for these animals. I want to make some sort of impact for them. But I didn't know how to do it, and I felt I couldn't find my voice, And when I first saw Gary Yourofsky's speech, it kind of really shook me to the core, because here was this man that was somehow saying all of the things I'd always wanted to say, and in an effective manner. That really kind of hit me, and I was like, I need to do this. And I actually, I wrote to him, and from that, going back and forth with him, developed a friendship, and now he's, one of my very dearest friends, and, my self-proclaimed mentor, and... one of my greatest supporters, and I love him to death, and I'm so grateful for having him in my life, because in the times, too, where I felt like, I'm not making any difference, he's been incredibly supportive, and hearing that from, my greatest inspiration is pretty amazing. Gary's kind of been my guiding light, with how to find my voice and how to effectively be an activist.
What a guy.
Yeah.
What a total gem of a human.
Yeah.
Do you have any final advice for anyone who is interested about veganism and hasn't yet taken any steps towards making it happen in their life?
It can seem overwhelming at the beginning. And I have people message me all the time saying, I want to go vegan, how do I do it? And kind of one of my joke answer to that, which is actually very true, is stop eating animals. That's kind of
pretty easy.
That's kind of what you do. It doesn't have to be, and this is something I'm very passionate about. It does not have to be this revolutionary, everything in my life is going to change, which in a way it is. Your thought things are going to open up. But don't think that you have to be okay, there's a lot of stereotypes about veganism, and you don't have to change, your friends, you don't have to change your religion, you don't have to change what movies you go to. You can be a Republican and a vegan. A lot of people don't think you can, but you can. You can be a conservative Christian and a vegan. It doesn't matter. There's no limit to who can be compassionate in their life. Things will start to change. You'll think about things differently, but the core of who you are as a person doesn't have to be altered. And I think that really terrifies a lot of people when they think, oh, if I'm a vegan, what does that say about me? And who am I going to be then? And when you're going vegan, just take it take it a little at a time. The simplest way to start is to look at the foods that you're eating right now and literally substitute them with vegan versions. If you get up and you have sausage, like a sausage and egg McMuffin type thing, go out and get some vegan sausage and like vegan egg substitutes and make yourself a sausage and egg McMuffin. Like, you can eat the exact same foods that you're eating now minus the cruelty. You don't have to go out and be a raw vegan who, never cooks anything, or a breatharian. You don't have to be this like super guru of vegan foods. It's really simple. And that's something that I'm pretty passionate about. You can eat vegan in whatever way works for you, and there's so much variety out there that anyone can be vegan in any way they want. You could eat, I've told people, like, I don't care if you eat sweet chili Doritos and Oreos all day.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
The animals don't really care. As long as you're not eating them, that's the main focus. And also, to anyone thinking about going vegan, I'll just say that it's going to be the most amazing journey that you ever take, and it's going to make this incredible impact on you, because there's something about ceasing to participate in cruelty that is really powerful, and different parts of the world start to open up, and it can be exciting, it can be heartbreaking, because you are realizing what's going on. But I would say, like, even with the pain of that, and even especially doing the work that I do and being constantly aware of the suffering all the time, I would never take away that truth. I would never want to go back to not knowing. It's the way to live in a way that is not impeding the lives of others. I don't know. I think that's just a powerful and a beautiful way to live.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Emily. Where can people find your videos and find your stuff?
Yeah, well, my channel is, if you go to youtube.com/bitesizevegan, you can also find me at bitesizevegan.com, and on there is all of my social media platforms and everything, so you can follow me and my dog, Ubi, who is also vegan. Dogs can be vegan. I have a video on that. So, yeah, you can find us all there, and I'm always trying to cover new and different topics about veganism, about animal rights, and I'm always happy to answer questions and help people along the way. So, and just so you know, I interviewed James here on my channel, so if you guys want to hear some more about his story, you can hop on over there and watch the video of his interview, because he said some pretty phenomenal stuff during our talk, so you get to hear his message as well.
Thank you so much for everything you do, Emily. You've helped a lot of non-vegans go vegan. You've helped me and a lot of other vegans be better vegans. I'm sure there's a lot of grateful people out there, and I'm one of them, so heartfelt thank you to you for all that you've done. And make sure you get onto her channel and follow, because it's amazing what she's been doing. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for what you've done and continue to do for the animals as well.
Yeah.